Welcome to the Citadel GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier. We are at Charleston Sports Club in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. It's a little chilly here in Charleston, but I'm enjoying it.
Feels good.
Yes.
Football weather.
That's right. Let me plug this in. But basically, tough week for the Dogs. Tough game at Furman. Furman, top of the conference.
Mm-hmm.
They showed that. They proved it to us, and they really kind of put it on us for the last few years of us beating them.
Right. They got a little bit of revenge for 3 Citadel wins in a row. And if you ask me, Furman is the best team in the league right now at this point, going into the final week of the regular season and then the playoffs.
I think just to reemphasize, Furman played Wofford the first conference game of the year, so both the Furman just wasn't ready with the new coaching staff.
I think that's right.
To the level. So what Jeff's saying is now with all the practice and games, he thinks if they played right now they would win, and it's tough to argue that because to argue against that because Wofford hasn't been beating people too bad.
No, they finally blew somebody out Saturday, which was VMI, the worst team in the league.
Right.
And there's a good chance they will meet in the playoffs the way the Citadel and Wofford did last year.
Right.
The regional groupings, the playoff committee. So a second round meeting between Furman and Wofford would not shock me at all.
That's one of the questions I have is, when App State and Georgia Southern and all of them were in the same conference, it seems like they would play each other in the Final Four, of it. So it stinks that, we have to play each other in these first few rounds. I think
everybody today is more cost conscious and
I don't think that's cool. I mean, it's not as exciting for playoffs. It's not truly who's the best team. It's who has the best game plan against each other. So, not a big fan of that. But hey, guys, it's Clemson week, number 2 in this week's poll. Our guys got to go practice up there earlier this season, and I know you wrote an article about how that was an eye-opening experience for these guys. They know how big stage this is going to be. Some of them have played there before, I believe. I think like Cam Jackson's probably played there before. He's been in the
2013,
so
maybe
that would have been his freshman year.
Yeah,
because it was my sophomore year. So, it's going to be an exciting time and a good game. I'm excited for it. But we'll be right back. We're going to talk some more Citadel football, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Citadel GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I played offensive line under 3 coaches during my time at the Citadel and just finished up my time at the football program last season. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier, who follows Citadel sports closer than anybody. We're just going to give a quick recap of this Furman game. We're going to kind of move on. The need to kind of emphasize this as Citadel fans. We want to stay positive, but tough game. 42-0 starts off. We score our first touchdown, second to last play of the game. Just not a good showing for either side.
No, and I think Brent Thompson had it about right after the game. Gave Furman a lot of credit. The Paladins have really come a long way under their first-year coach, Clay Hendricks, who played offensive line at Furman and was the O-line coach at Air Force for about 10 years. He was actually in the mix when the Citadel hired Mike Houston a few years ago. Clay Hendricks was in the mix at that time at the Citadel, and he's done a fantastic job. And what impressed me about Furman is here's an option team with multiple looks that throws the ball very efficiently.
Right. I
The
think it was
quarterback
10 for 12.
11 of 14,
11 of 14.
for more than 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's been doing that all season long. Furman averages about 280 rushing yards a game and leads the league in passing efficiency, and that's a deadly combination right there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the Citadel would like to get, not passing as much as Furman does, even though Furman only averages 16 or 17 throws a game. But, 10 to 12 throws a game and hit 6 or 8 of them for big yardage. That's where you want to be as an option team.
Yeah. I mean, I think, different ball games, but these guys have definitely mastered the defense against the triple option, at least the Citadel as
Chad
well.
Staggs has won 5 in a row now against the Citadel, their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's not good. I mean, 42 to nothing off the start, only 146 yards rushing. That's I can only imagine Coach Boyd right now, Coach Boyd, Coach Thompson, that meeting room. A positive in the negative is 223 passing yards.
Yeah.
But I put in parentheses here, 70 some of that came on the last 2 plays of the game.
The second to last play of the game was a long pass to, I believe, Logan Bailey.
Right.
And then on the last play of the game, Brandon Berry scored a 1-yard touchdown.
So I mean, that kind of throws up those numbers a little bit. Probably been about 150 and 150, which
but they pulled Dom Allen pretty early, and when it became apparent they weren't going to be able to run the ball very well, and put in Jordan Black, and he threw some good passes, threw some wayward passes as well. So, but it was a good experience for Jordan. He's played a lot this year, heading into next year when he'll almost certainly be the starter, and he'll play a lot against Clemson too, I think.
That's going to go a long way next season. I hope they give Dom the opportunity to enjoy his last few runs.
He'll start at Clemson, and as long as things are moving along, I think he'll stay in. But they would definitely want to get Jordan Black a lot of snaps at Clemson.
Definitely. Another positive is Cam Jackson. He had a good game overall. Another positive in the light. He had 271 all-purpose yards and had his biggest kick return of his year.
Right, a 51-yarder. And it's hard to believe before that, the Citadel's longest kickoff return of the season was 35 yards.
Yeah.
So special teams has not been great for the Citadel this year by any means when you look at returns and field goal kicking and even punts after they lost their starting punter early in the season,
right?
Who left school. So that's another area that they'll need to work on in the offseason and spring practice is special teams. But Cam has played really hard the last 2 weeks, I thought, against Western Carolina and then against Furman. Really ran hard, broke 2 tackles on the long pass play for a touchdown. He caught a short pass and turned it into a long touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who knows Cam Jackson knows how great of a kid he is, knows how nice of a kid he is, knows how hard of a worker he is. I think he's, currently working at a gym. He full-time football and is in grad school getting his MBA. One of those guys who just finds a way just to, get it done, even when things kind of don't look like it's going to work out. But he's one of those guys.
That's why you feel bad for guys like Dom Allen and Cam Jackson, because they were such a huge part of the success you guys had the last 2 years. Dom, as a sophomore starter, won a Southern Conference championship, won at USC. Cam Jackson played a big role on all those teams, and now for their senior years not to go quite as well, it's disappointing for those guys. But I think after a few weeks they'll be able to look back at their entire career and be proud of what they did.
Definitely. I mean, they gotta focus on the light. They gotta enjoy this Clemson week, which we're going to talk about later, of what is it like to be in your last week as well as playing Clemson last week, which is pretty cool. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But, these guys just need to enjoy it. I think the alumni, we just need to sit back and enjoy this week and just be fans, enjoy it, understand what this weekend's going to be. Obviously, we expect nothing more than our dogs to go up there and give a fight like we do every week. But, for me, this is just going to be a good time to send these guys off in the right way, be nothing but encouraging. They're playing in one of the coolest stadiums out there. So
it'll be a great atmosphere at Clemson. They've got things rolling again this year. Number 2, as you mentioned, in the college football playoff. So, and looking forward to the USC game next week, which should be a really great one because the Gamecocks have shown improvement
Yeah, they
this year.
have.
So that should be a fun game for the entire state to enjoy. Kyle, I had a question I wanted to
Yes,
ask
sir.
you. Does Citadel have any kind of tradition in the last practice of the year? I know at Wofford, I think they run a lap or something the last practice of the year. Did you guys do anything like that?
You know, I think sometimes they carry you off the field,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if we did that last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's all up to like the seniors if they want to make a big deal of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we didn't know when our last game
Right, when you're in the
practice of the
playoffs, you don't
season.
know. Yeah.
So, do you celebrate that now? Because I can imagine coaches being like, well, you guys are already, so you can't. So I would say the last 2 years, I can't remember anything because of the fact that we didn't know when our last game of the season was. And every week we thought it was not. We thought we were going to win. So, no. And Wofford has that. Maybe they will this year since they kind of know, hey, this is definitely your last practice. So I don't know. I think something is like carrying off the field or something like that.
Okay.
But I can't say anything with the playoffs. So maybe I have to investigate into that a little bit.
Investigative journalism.
There we go.
We'll look into it.
Here we go. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick little break. We're going to be right back. We're going to we're going to break down the offensive side of the ball, then we're going to break down the defensive side of the ball, just go into, hey, what kind of went wrong, what were the reasons why it went wrong, and then we're going to start just going off on positive notes. So we're just going to touch on this and focus on the good from here on out. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome to the Citadel GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier. We've been talking a little bit of Citadel football, what happened. We recapped what happened against Furman last week. And now we're going to talk about the offense and the defense side of the ball. So on the offense, we only had 146 yards on the ground. What do you credit that to?
As we've talked about most of the season, I think the biggest difference in this team and last year's team, or maybe the last two, is the guard positions at offensive line, where the Citadels had to start two freshmen this year, and then at fullback, where they lost Tyler Renew to graduation, and then they lost Evan McField to an injury, and Evan was slotted to be the heir apparent. So you wind up with a quarterback playing fullback, which is not ideal. And to me, those three positions are the major difference in the offense between this year and last year. You start two kids fresh out of high school who are big kids, big, strong kids, but they haven't been through a college weightlifting program except maybe a few weeks in the summer. So it's hard to ask those guys, as you well know, to step in and block D1 linemen.
Right. We just were talking about this, and why hasn't this person played more, and why hasn't this person played more? The older guys. I mean, the offensive line position is one of those things. It's just super tough to physically get ready for, and not everybody can. You look in high school, and we're going to talk about this more later, or we'll just go ahead and talk about it now. It's just basically people are like, well, why do we have two freshman guards starting? Well, we have two freshman guards starting because the Citadel is a tough place to keep any student. It's tough to keep, and then you got to keep a student cadet athlete. All these things, and it's tough. It's tough to get players there, and it's tough to keep players there. And when things are already bad, everybody is doubtful their freshman year in the core, and then it's like, hey, now you're not being successful on the football field. These people are just sometimes leave, and
they're used to being successful and used to being one of the best players on their team.
Right.
And I know there's been some personnel losses on the offensive line, and it only takes one or two of those to throw your whole pipeline out of whack, your whole plan.
Right, exactly. So it's one of those deals where people are like, well, why haven't we recruited better? Why haven't we done this? They have. It's just sometimes your plan doesn't fall into place. There's, bumps in the roads, and that's what we're seeing right now. I know some guys. We have Javion Duncan. We were talking about he's now playing defensive line for Carolina. So you want to talk about a guy who was definitely athletic, definitely strong enough, definitely fast enough. He'd be playing guard right now. Andrew LaLusso would be playing tackle. We would have Isaiah Pinson playing tackle as well. That means we could have Tyler at center and Drew at guard. And we wouldn't have to start any true freshmen. So it's things like this. It's, one player two players at the same position. If you lose them, then it's just tough. And at the offensive line, you have to continue to have such great offensive linemen in order to be a successful triple option. And we were just seeing a little bump, but I'm excited to see what these two guys are going to be doing. In the near future.
In 3 years, they'll look back and say, "Oh man, that freshman year I learned so much." Right. And it really accelerated my progress.
Yep.
But right now, it's a tough situation to deal with, and it's not like at Clemson or Carolina where you have 85 scholarships and you got dudes lined up ready to play.
Yep.
So
you only get, I think, 55,
63.
63. So you say that's not that big of a difference. Well, that is. That's 5 extra players a year that, hey, if they don't work out, that's okay. So you definitely have to be more precise in who you're recruiting.
Right.
With these guys, because you can't afford a player not to pan out or a player to do this or that. Or
if one or two don't pan out or leave the school, then that leaves your whole plan in a lurch.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's what happened here. And
also on the defensive side of the ball, we'll move on to that. Guys like Travis Johnson, you got Kevin Graham, like all those guys. Those are perfect examples of guys who would not just be good players, would be good leaders on our team right now, and they're not here for this or that reason. And if they were here, it would be a totally different season, totally different team, totally different atmosphere. Those young guys, they have good leaders to look up to, but they just don't have the amounts of good leaders that we have had in the years past.
I think the defense had played well all year except for maybe 15 minutes at Samford, and then Saturday against Furman. Obviously, they did not play well at all, and they're a little beat up right now. Jalon Williams did not play. The defensive tackle did not play at Furman, and neither did Khalil Williams, the SoCon Defensive Player of the Year, has been out for a couple of weeks now, and I don't think he'll play against Clemson either. So, yeah, they're a little beat up now, but, everybody is a little beat up at this stage of the season.
But you're talking about two guys who have had great seasons, who have made great impacts. One in the running game, one in the passing game dominantly. So you want to talk about two guys? There's another reason. But we have to have guys. I know Furman scored in the first half on drives of 6, 5, 6, 6, and 7 plays.
Yeah, they were just ripping down the field, and I think it's just credit to Furman and maybe the Citadel. You get down quick like that, it's hard to.
Especially after a season when you've been beat, you kind of get used to losing. And none of these guys are loser mentalities, but, it's tough when, things haven't been working out week in and week out. Then, this team who is good going into the game comes in and gets on a hot start on you. And then, you're a young guy, you're a young team, and you just kind of think, well, we'll just keep going through the motions instead of, what can we do to change it?
It sounds like Brent Thompson lit into him pretty good at halftime, and they did play a little bit better after the half. Of course, that some might consider that garbage time when it's 35-0 at the half. But, those days are going to happen, and it's happened the other way in that rivalry as well. So, but, I think SoCon football is better when Furman is good. Citadel fans might not like to hear that, but Furman has a proud tradition, and Clay Hendricks has gone a long way to bring that back. So if Furman's going to be competitive and, Wofford's going to be competitive, that gives the Citadel a high bar to meet in the next couple of years.
This is just making for a great Southern Conference in the years that come. I'm keep relating it to the SEC, which this year might not be a great way. But, is what I'm trying to say is hey, when all these teams start recruiting right and keep winning, Wofford, Citadel, Samford can get hot. Western can get hot.
Mercer's on the rise.
Mercer's in Georgia. That's a recruiting powerhouse. Great school, new facilities, new program. that's winning decently.
Mm-hmm.
All these teams are just going to keep winning, and it's going to become like Georgia Southern and App State and all those great teams. And when Wofford was, was
Yeah, you
good,
just need.
they're just going to continue to beat each other, and it's going to be a great conference, a hard conference to go win all the games like we did when I won the SoCon. So it's going to be one of those deals. Chattanooga. I mean, we're not going to expect Chattanooga to
No,
be
they'll
down
they'll
for
be
very
back.
long.
Yeah.
They're going to figure out a way to get good again. So, I mean, those easy wins this year aren't easy wins in the years to come.
Beating East Tennessee State was not easy this year.
Right.
So the league is only going to get stronger, I think, in the next few years. So that'll be just another challenge for Brent Thompson to meet as he tries to extend his own legacy at the Citadel.
Right. Now, have you heard anything about recruiting yet, or?
No, it's a little early. I did see a tape of a commitment. If you look on lordsofdiscipline.net, and this kid looks pretty good. He's a running back, linebacker. He looks pretty good. I don't even know his name, but it's way early for Citadel in recruiting. So I'll talk to Brent Thompson next week about what the priorities are, what positions he feels like they need to concentrate on, and I'm sure they'll sign at least one more quarterback going into next year. And it's going to be interesting to see the position changes in spring training. Is Brandon Rainey going to stay at fullback, or might he move back to quarterback?
Right.
Malik Brooks is a young man who they did redshirt this year. He'll be an A-back, and Brent Thompson really likes Malik Brooks, thinks he can be special starting next year. Will Evan McPhee be back at 100% in spring practice? It'll be almost a year when spring practice starts since his injury, so he should be back after about a year with a torn ACL.
Right.
So. And then the situation on the offensive line, will there be any red shirts that can help with depth on the offensive line? But as you know, they do not play a lot of guys on the OL.
The offensive line is the only position he says, I want to find my five best and play. I think this year, they played 6 maybe. They had Mark Weekland rotating in there a little bit. But I know ideally Coach Boyd wants to find his 5 and go with it and maybe have a few rotations as injuries comes. And, I mean, obviously he wants to have good guys behind you. But he doesn't want to take you guys out. And that's fun during games, and during practices it's awful because you go say, well, you guys aren't coming off the field, so he makes you take all the reps and all that. So but it's one of those deals where he wants to find his 5, and he will this spring. Now everybody will have a good amount of time in the system, and the spring is going to be one of those deals where he's really going to be able to iron it out and figure out who he wants there and how he wants to roll.
Another kid I'm interested in watching in the spring is Ryan McCarthy, who redshirted at quarterback this year. He apparently is just an outstanding athlete, like 37-inch vertical leap, and he's about 6'2", and he's also apparently the best baseball player on campus. So,
already?
Yeah. Well, he doesn't play baseball at the Citadel, at least not yet.
Okay.
But he was a standout player in high school who could have been drafted. Scouts were looking at him. I don't think he was drafted. But apparently he's the best baseball player on campus, and so it could be interesting to see if he decides to try to play 2 sports. He's slated to be the backup quarterback next fall unless things change. So I don't know if Brent Thompson would want to give him up for any amount of spring practice.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that relationship with the new baseball coach pans out, and how they can work out a system where he can be in the weight room and at practice, but still be able to play baseball and help the team out there too. So we're going to be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk about SoCon playoffs. We're going to talk about how everything's panning out and how many teams the Southern Conference is going to get in the playoffs. Welcome back to the Citadel GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier. We're going to talk about the Southern Conference and how it's panning out. For one, who's going to win the conference. 2, how many teams are going to make the playoffs, and
Right.
how if this team beats this team this week. We know we have Furman and Sanford playing each other this
Right.
week.
Well,
If this
Wofford
team
has
beats
already
this team,
clinched
a
a
share.
share of the SoCon title with their victory over VMI last week, and they clinched the automatic berth in the playoffs. So we know that Wofford will at least be a co-champion and will be in the playoffs with the automatic bid from the SoCon. Then you have Furman at 6-1 in the league, playing Sanford at 5-2 in the league this weekend. And Furman needs to win that game to claim a share of the SoCon title. And Sanford, I think, needs to win to get into the playoffs. So I think if Furman wins, the SoCon might wind up with just two teams. And I don't know if Sanford would be in at 7-4 and 5-3. They might. That might be good enough to get in. And if they do lose to Furman and still get in, that would give three teams uh, in the playoffs. Western Carolina is 7-4, 5-3, and they play North Carolina this week. So odds are they're going to win it. They're going to end at 7-5. Not sure if that'll be enough to get in.
Right.
So anywhere from 2 to 4 teams. That's not much of an answer for you.
Right.
But
Well, it's cool that we have the potential of 4 teams
Mhm.
getting in there. I would hope we get at least 3.
Mhm.
So hopefully,
if Sanford beats Furman, then there definitely will be at least three
yeah.
in the playoffs.
I know. One thing about FCS playoffs is you just can never tell. All these rankings are out, and
Well, it's 24
we're
teams.
ranked
It's a lot of
this.
teams.
Does that mean anything? Does it not? I don't know. And then it's who all the poll thinks, and they don't really kind of release their thoughts until the day, until the poll comes out. So you really can't tell. So it's one of those things I knew when we were. So the first time we made the playoffs, we were playing Carolina. The coaches were like, "Hey, we're going to make the playoffs. We're going to make the playoffs." But then when we beat Carolina, they said we probably weren't going to make the playoffs unless if we beat Carolina. And I was like, "Well, so it's one of those deals where,
Yeah.
you know,
And then last year you knew you were in
right,
going into the North Carolina game.
right, and then that made that game a lot funner.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that going into Clemson week. Is, hey, our season's done.
Mhm.
These players done. Go out and have fun. Go out
Mhm.
and enjoy this game.
Mhm.
North Carolina was a very serious situation in our minds because number one, we thought we could win. Number two, we had more to play for than just that week, so we couldn't, do this and that. These guys are going to go out. Hopefully, Coach Thompson will have some tricks. So just to make things some fun and have a good time. So, I'm excited for that they get to enjoy that again. But so Wofford, how high a seed will we think they will get?
I think Wofford will get a first round bye. The top 8 seeds
Okay.
get a first round bye, so Wofford will get one of those. They've been basically a top 10 team all year. What's been funny about the polls, especially the coaches poll, they've been so slow on Furman. I don't think Furman was ranked in the coaches poll till last week.
Really?
So that's really kind of embarrassing for the coaches poll. And I don't know how many coaches actually vote in the coaches poll. Probably not very many. But Furman should have been ranked a long time before that. And as we discussed earlier, wouldn't shock me at all if Furman and Wofford play each other in the second round.
I want to talk about a big away game there. Not that much of a home field advantage.
Right.
For that, I'd be very upset once again.
Right. In the playoffs, you want to play some different teams from around the country.
Right.
You don't want to play somebody that you play every year. And I know you guys ran into that against Wofford last year. So, but the Sanford Furman game is a huge game, and I'd have to make. I'm not even sure where it's at. I think it's at Sanford. I think Furman, as I said earlier, is the best team in the league right now as far as the offense, defense, just the balance they have on offense,
momentum, all those factors that are going in.
Those fullbacks are something special. One's about 230, one's about 240, and they both rumbled against the Citadel. So, and then you have a senior quarterback who really is an accurate passer, and that makes such a huge difference in the option offense.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I wish the Citadel was in there, but hopefully next year we'll be back into that consideration. We talk about the preseason polls. We talked about that in the first few weeks of the season. I I know we were up at the very top.
Number
I know
2.
Wofford was up there, so Wofford panned out. Furman was
7th.
So that's not very accurate at
So
all.
Clay Hendricks will certainly be the coach of the year in the SoCon, and deservedly so. Kind of where Mike Houston was going into his second year. I think the Citadel was picked 7th.
Can we
And
expect
you guys,
any of the Citadel football players to be on the all-conference team?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Miles Pierce, the linebacker,
Okay.
is a good choice. Tyler Davis, the center, might have a good opportunity. I wish Cam Jackson, he made the preseason all-conference team. I don't think he got the number of touches that he'll need to compete with the stats of some of the other guys, but
Right.
he's a guy that would get my vote on the all-conference
It's
team.
guys like Aaron Miller. I think he's an all-conference quarterback, but he never got all-conference because he didn't have the passing yards that the guys at Western Carolina have.
Right.
So, it's guys like that kind of Cam Jackson's in that same situation. He's an all-conference player, but
I think Jalon Williams might have had a shot before he got hurt. We'll have to see how his numbers stack up. I think Miles Pierce is a good choice as you go through the lineup.
So Miles, Tyler, maybe slide in there, Cam, Kyleek, obviously.
Yep.
Even though he's missed some games, so still gets a selection for something. Maybe just not Defensive Player of the Year. So a lot to look at. A lot of hopefully, and hopefully maybe some all-freshman team as well, since we do have a lot of freshmen. Both of those guards will probably make that team, I would say. And can't remember all the redshirt freshmen, but I'm sure we'll have a few of those as well. So,
and I think in the big picture, if this is the rebuilding year and the bottom of the curve, the bell curve, then Citadel fans should be okay with that.
Right.
You don't want to get back to the 2 and 3 win seasons that were the bottom of the curve before.
Right.
So if Brent Thompson can make this 5-win season the bottom of his bell curve and then back up like that, because it's always going to go in cycles.
Season, basically, I mean that's not a great season. It's not fun, and we lost a lot at home, but it's a good season. It's a good bad season. It's a good miss.
If that's your it's a golf term. It's a good miss.
Right.
If that's your wayward tee shot, then you're doing okay.
Right.
But if you drive it way into the woods and win 2 games, that's when you're in trouble.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. All right, guys. Well, we're going to be back. When we come back, we're going to talk about what it's like to be a senior right now, what it's about to be like going into your last game. These guys have been playing football for 15 years. What is it like to realize my career is coming to an end, and it's coming to an end at Clemson? So we'll be right back, and I'll share some of my experiences, and we'll talk more Citadel football. Welcome back to the Citadel GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I'm an former Citadel football player. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier, who still follows Citadel sports very, very closely. We're going to talk about what it's like to be a senior. So there's the guys who have been very successful. You wrote an article about, almost could be the tied for the 3rd winningest team, or what was the numbers?
They needed 30, I think, to tie for the winningest senior class.
Okay. And what are they going to end up at?
29.
29.
If they can't beat Clemson.
If they can't beat Clemson. So 29, then it was back-to-back winning seasons for the first time since 1990 to 92.
Yeah.
So, these guys have been a part of some great teams, great success, great Citadel football, done so much for the program. But now, without the playoff hopes, they know this is their last game. So my experience is a little different because we were in the playoffs. We thought we were going to beat Wofford, all these things. But, just from hanging out around guys the years before me when we kind of knew this was our last week of practice, these guys are going to act like They're excited. You know, any time that end of the season, like in anything, it's tough. You know, you've been practicing for months on months on months, doing the same thing every week. So these guys are going to be excited for something new. They're going to be excited for the workforce. They're going to be excited for all that. But at the same time, you know, inside they're going to be like, man, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this football. You know, it's crazy. I'll never do this. Is my inside drill was my least favorite drill, and it's like I'll never do this again. And it's crazy to think about. And you know, the young guys are going to give you guys a little crap and all that, but you know, these guys have so much to be proud of. And you know, like we were talking about earlier, is last year we went to UNC. Number one, we went in there like we were going to win. We honestly thought we had a shot. You know, and you know, we just built it up that we had a shot. And, you know, these guys are going to go into Clemson. And we were very serious last year. We had playoffs to consider of who do you play? Do you play them the whole game? Do you get them hurt? All those things. And, you know, this year they just get to go out and play whoever they want to play, get everybody experience, enjoy the atmosphere, and go big or go home.
Maybe that'll help them a little bit. They just kind of play loose and turn it loose a little. But I was wondering when you see the finish line in sight of your career, what does your body tell you? Or do you have to push yourself to get to that finish line after all those years of football?
So you definitely your fifth year, Coach D does a good job. He backs you off weights. Basically, he says when you enter your fifth year, you're as strong as you're going to get to most guys. He's like, if you haven't gained the extra 10 pounds on your bench press, you're not going to gain it this year. So he lets you not tone down at all, but you just do different workouts to be helping your body, you know, maintain instead of, hey, let's go hit heavy squats and heavy bench and tear your muscles and let them rebuild and all that. So that's different. Practices are definitely a grind, mentally and physically. Especially for me, it was like, you know, hey, coach, I kind of know what I'm like. Obviously, I made tons of mistakes my senior year. Don't let me fool you on that. But I know what I'm doing. Like I could watch film with coach for 30 minutes and kind of have an idea. You know, the blitzes still got me. I still had to see the blitzes because every team has different blitzes. Still needed to see the movement. Still needed to work on those things week in and week out. But I was kind of like, Coach, you know, let me tone down my reps a little bit. And, of course, I would never say that to him. And number two, he would never let it happen. But there was definitely guys, Joe Crochet, who got that privilege and, you know, got to tone it back. And Joe's going to call me and be like, yeah, right, man. But, you know, there was definitely guys so all these guys, some of these guys get to tone it back a little bit to take care of your body. As far as motivation for game in and game out, we never had a problem with that because we were winning and we had more to play for. Now, this year, and I know when we had losing seasons and I was a part of that, those guys would check out, unfortunately, pretty early. And, you know, you have some guys who would and enjoy. They were enjoying it and just kind of taking in the moments, but not necessarily like pushing. Then you have those guys who it's just in their personality just to never stop and, you know, continue to just grind and be that guy.
As a fifth-year player at the Citadel, you have to have some, and hopefully it's instilled in you after 4 years at the Citadel, some inner discipline and motivation to not lose that edge in your fifth year when you're living off campus and you're not having to dress up in your uniform and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that was, you know, living off campus and taking night classes as a grad student and all that. I mean, that really helped as well because I got more sleep than I ever did at the Citadel. So just for recovery on your body, I also, you know, was able to go in and if I wanted to do a pull workout or if I wanted to go stretch or all that, I had more time on my hands. So that was a privilege that I had. But not everybody gets that. And, you know, as a fifth year, it's tough in any program. But I think, you know, having something to play for definitely helped. And unfortunately, these guys don't have it. But again, on the tradition side as well as this is, you know, I kind of have a skewed.
That's the thing about this season. They had hope up until about 9 games in.
Right. Yeah.
So there was something to play for, and that's the frustrating thing about this team. You kept, and I know Brent Thompson probably feels the same way. He kept expecting that breakthrough to come any week, and it might have. They played Wofford so tough. I think it was 20-14 or 20-16. That could have been the breakthrough game, but it never happened.
Right.
So
and back to this point, it's these seniors aren't in contention to be the most winningest seniors in Citadel or tied or get 30 wins because they didn't have the right attitude. These guys are guys who turned around a program and did that because of their attitudes, because of their internal motivation, because of all those. So these guys are going to continue just to put out for our program, and that's why we've had so much success. So I just want to kind of emphasize that. And all that. So we have a question back to recruiting. We had a question on what was the name of the baseball player who can play both. He's on the team now.
Ryan McCarthy. He's a redshirt
McCarthy.
quarterback. He's been on the sideline. I think he's number 12, signaling in plays.
Okay, so he's wearing the orange hat
all season long.
Season
and
hat.
I did some reading on him. He was a standout player. He went to a small, private school, Pinecrest in Georgia.
Okay.
And was a standout baseball player who had a chance to be drafted. I'm not sure if he ever was drafted, but an outfielder and a good hitter. And but playing quarterback in college was his goal.
Right.
So that's
cool.
what he focused on, and the Citadel signed him as a quarterback, and he's probably in line to be the backup to Jordan Black next year.
If there's not position changes.
Right.
Cool.
So, so who knows if Tony Skoll will talk to Brent Thompson about Ryan McCarthy trying to play both sports or something like that. That's a long way off. But it is out there. He was an outstanding baseball player in high school as well.
Right. Well, we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about this, a little bit about that. We got some volleyball. We had a first player named to the all-freshman team. We're going to talk about Jim Center and the situation that the Citadel athletic director is in for his job search, or not search, but he's getting interest. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, what that means for Citadel sports. And then we're just going to maybe answer some more fan mail. So we'll be right back, guys. Welcome back to the Citadel GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier. In this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about everything. So we'll start off with congratulating one of our volleyball players on being named to the all-freshman volleyball team, which I think you wrote an article on. Was the first
time they've had an all-freshman. They've had all-conference players before, I think.
Right.
But this is the first time they have had a young lady make the all-freshman team. Her name is Charlissa De Jesus.
Yeah, I was going to let you say that.
And she is from Puerto Rico. And I actually talked to her earlier this year after the hurricane in Puerto Rico. She and Leandro Allende, Leandro Allende from the men's basketball team are both from Puerto Rico. And when I talked to her, she was very shy and didn't have a lot to say about what was going on in Puerto Rico. But I know she was concerned about her family, and they were okay.
Good.
But she is apparently an outstanding player as an outside hitter, if you know what that is in volleyball. I think it's the one that does a lot of spikes. And she's not that tall.
Really?
So she,
vertical.
Outstanding. She must have. So she had an outstanding season, and that that's the kind of recruits you need to start building.
Basketball team had a few of those last year. Now hopefully they'll build on that.
Any sports, you need some good young recruits to build on. So maybe that's a good sign for Citadel volleyball going forward.
That's awesome. Well, we just want to say congratulations on that. The next situation we want to talk about is Jim Center. For all you who don't know, he's getting some interest and is, I think, maybe in the final round or
final three for the AD job at Texas El Paso.
Okay.
UTEP, as it's commonly known, which obviously is in El Paso. And he was there on Monday touring the campus and the facilities. And it's not an unusual situation. I think he probably would prefer that it didn't get out, but a TV station in El Paso reported the 3 finalists for that job. And it could be a situation where a headhunter was employed and went out and looked for candidates and found Jim Center. Jim spent much of his career out west, Colorado, Idaho, schools like that, Idaho State. So it's not surprising that he might feel at home out west. He's got a 4-year contract at the Citadel that runs out at near the end of 2018, August 2018, I believe.
Okay.
So he's under contract for another year at the Citadel.
Or something,
but UTEP is an FBS job as opposed to FCS. Would likely mean a pay raise and a little bigger program to oversee. So, if a guy's looking to further his career and move on up the ladder, then that would not be a surprising move.
Yep.
So I know he's well thought of in the athletic director world. Many Citadel people have commented on how personable and interested he is in Citadel fans' comments and suggestions since he's been here. So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
So as somebody who's been around for a few changes in that position, what's next for the Citadel? What can we expect as far as, do they start preparing for that? How do they prepare, or do they just let it happen?
Well, General Rosa will be leaving his job in the near future as well. So there already a search going on for the next Citadel president. So it'll be interesting to see how the timing of that works out. If Jim Center should leave before General Rosa does, or if they leave about the same time, or Jim Center could stay at the Citadel. Who knows how it's going to work out.
Match whatever they're going to pay him, or this or that.
Or he doesn't get the job at UTEP, So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Well, we just wanted to bring that up to you guys just so you guys are informed. Last thing in this segment, we want to Jack King reached out to us this week, and we just want to say thank you for reaching out and your positive words. We will be talking a little bit about baseball and a little bit about basketball. We actually are hoping to have the basketball coach on the show here in the near future. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll see where we go from there. As far as
just quickly, the basketball team is off to a 1-1 start. They beat a Division III team called Oglethorpe, and then they lost at Virginia Tech on Sunday. And really the story so far has been this young freshman, Tariq Simmons, 6-foot guard from Columbia. He's like another Preston Parks. He scored 14 in the opener and 22 at Virginia Tech. And then Hayden Brown, a 6'6 freshman from Burns, also scored 22 at Virginia Tech. So this is a team with 6 freshmen, so it's going to be a learning curve, but they also have some juniors and sophomores that I think can lead to a better season than they had last year.
That's exciting. We're getting some scores on our team, which I know is what is necessary for the style of basketball.
Duger Balcom's teams are always going to score. It's a question of how much they're going to give up.
Right.
So they gave up 132 at Virginia Tech, which is a little too much.
Right. But, hey, just because you're going to take a ton of shots and you're going to score eventually, but, it's how many percentage of those shots you're going to make. So it looks like we're trying to get some – we're not trying, but we are getting some shooters and some young point guards who are very capable.
The whole goal of Duger's system is to force turnovers by the other team. So I think and his plan is when they get in conference play, they'll be ready with their pressure defense to create a little havoc for the other side and force some turnovers.
How did they fare against Virginia Tech?
132-93. They lost. And Virginia Tech is a very good team that likes to play fast too. So Duger's kind of playing into their hands, right?
Okay. So
playing
not
his
a great matchup.
But he's not going to change his system for one game.
Right.
He wants his guys to get better at what they're doing and not slow it down just to keep the score down in one game. So that wouldn't accomplish much at all.
Well, definitely. Anything else before we wrap this up?
No. Tony Skoll and his guys wrapped up the World Series recently, and they continue their off-season workouts. And the season will start in mid-February with Louisville and Dan McDonnell coming to town.
Awesome. Well, I just want to inform you guys, I will not be here next week. I'm taking my first business trip, actually, so I'm pretty excited about that, to Raleigh, North Carolina. So I will be out. Jeff and John Raw will be joining you guys. We don't know whether it will be in Charleston or elsewhere, but we will definitely have a show for you guys. Look forward to having you guys back next week, and I'll be back the following week to talk more about the off season and all that. And Jeff, thank you for joining us today. And we're at the Charleston Sports Pub, and we appreciate all our sponsors. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.